So next up, we have a panel discussion between Robin from GGV Capital and Kevin from Plug and Play. And also my colleague Leon will be joining us as well. Let me quickly get our speakers onto the stage. Hi, Kevin.
Hey.
Hey, Leon.
Hey, Jing, how's it going? Hey, Kevin. What's up, man?
Hi, Robin.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey. So we're all here. How are you guys doing?
I'm happy to kick it off with some quick intros before we dive in. First and foremost, thank you again, Robin. Thanks, Kevin, for your time. So we have today with us two principals, Kevin Parakkattu. He's principal and my friend from Plug and Play Ventures, whose previous investments include the likes of PayPal, NatureBox, Honey, Dropbox, and so much more. He focuses on brand and retail and e-commerce solutions. Some of the work he does really leverages Plug and Play's corporate network in collaboration with companies like TJX, Rakuten, Mars, Kohl's, and more to find and implement frontier technologies. So he engages with the retail ecosystem internationally through some of Plug and Play's other partners. And then we have Robin Li, who's also a principal. She's at GGV Capital. She focuses on investments in consumer, new retail, and urban technology. She serves on the board of directors for amazing companies and startups, including Bustle Digital Group, Glow Concept, Fleabur, and Odeco. And she's formerly the board director of Lively, which was acquired by Wakol in 2019. And so she's actively involved with startups like Box, Ibotta, Poshmark, StockX, and so much more. Well, Kevin and Robin, thanks again for joining us today. Would love to kind of jump into the questions. If you could briefly introduce maybe yourself, your firm, and a bit about the spaces, the problems, and some of the founders you seek to invest behind.
Go ahead first, Robin.
Oh, okay. Thanks for having me, and really excited to speak to everyone here today. So to give a brief overview about GGV, we've been around for 2 decades and have been global investors. I actually sit in New York, but we have colleagues in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, and Menlo Park. We also have a Singapore office that covers Southeast Asia and India, and we also have Beijing and Shanghai offices, which cover China. So we are kind of one team globally and invest across the world. And so we would like to say that, you know, we invest in local founders, but we also invest in global companies. We have been kind of investing across all stages. We're thematic investors, and so we invest in certain verticals and all stages across those verticals as well. But I'd say primarily we have anything from like early stage seed to late stage pre-IPO, but sweet spot is C, Series A, Series B is where we tend to put most of our dollars to work. As a firm, we cover a lot of categories. Consumer internet is a big piece, and I guess why I'm here to talk today, because I cover that. We also do a lot of e-commerce, digital media, social media under consumer. So other areas that we invest in as a fund include enterprise SaaS and frontier tech. So yeah, we're kind of like we do kind of almost everything under the sun.
Yeah, and then on my side, similar to GGV, we're also very global across 34 locations, 8 in China, 2 in Japan, and then several in Europe, of course, the United States. What Plug and Play is we are really 2 major things. So one is a venture capital firm. We've been fortunate to back 11 different unicorns. Leon mentioned a few. Most recently was a company called Flyboard. And the other side of our business is we're a corporate innovation platform. So large corporations come to us to meet with different startups. We directly introduce them, then leverage the insight they give to us to ultimately make investment decisions. We do this across 15 different verticals. My babies, of course, are retail and media, but we also have fintech, insurtech, travel, IoT, and several others.
Awesome.
Great. So can I kick it off with 2 of my questions there?
Go ahead.
So yeah, looking at the premise of our conference, e-commerce reimagined, the premise is that post-COVID, e-commerce must be reprioritized and reimagined. Is investing in e-commerce also being reimagined, and how? And Robin, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the talk of our week-to-week meetings, right? And it is quite interesting because it is a very exciting moment in time for us investors, because you have a huge kind of consumer behavior shift about, like, the at-home economy now, or like what will life be like with coronavirus here to stay for a while. I mean, in the US we have kind of a resurgence again, right, in many different cities. So I think the way we look at it is twofold. One is, how is e-commerce imagined in certain categories, right? Whether it's apparel, or it's food, it's grocery, but it's also like, how is e-commerce ecosystem change in terms of behavior? So we're looking a lot into logistics, into how financing works, because people are not using cash anymore, and a lot of pivoting into contactless payments, right? Or order pickup, order ahead. And so a lot of I think into these two categories, I'm happy to dive deeper, but let Kevin speak as well into what he's seeing.
Yeah, so it's sitting on both retail and media. I think what I'm personally noticing, being Robin is too, I feel that a lot of times media companies these days are becoming increasingly retail heavy, and retail companies are becoming increasingly media heavy. So on the latter, we've seen a bunch of live stream shopping companies. I think Network was on the line before, several others. That's becoming a very frothy market that I'm noticing. Is a lot of different players coming into that. And then on the media companies becoming retailers, probably the biggest one I've seen is Netflix. There's some news of Netflix actually starting a whole retail division, and they're actively hiring within that kind of spectrum. And then we're also seeing kind of telcos come into that space. So e-com as a presence, I think, will change in how we traditionally define e-com as let's say a retailer and selling online. I think that's going to be challenged in the next year or so.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is quite interesting to see, like, traditionally a lot of even digital media companies solely relied on, affiliate revenues, right? Like, and now a lot of that has been turned off because Amazon, Walmart, and the likes, they were like, we don't need more traffic driven to our sites. We can barely handle all the search. So, like, what are alternative ways for them to kind of get traction, right, and revenue? So it is quite interesting to see what's going ahead there. One of the examples I can share is, like, as you're saying, live streaming is something that is starting to pick up. Well, one of our portfolio companies, Poshmark, I don't know if the audience may know about it, but it started off with secondhand goods, but they also have new and used goods now. And it is a network of about 60 million registered users, and 8 million of those are seller stylists and people who are on the platform selling their own goods, whether it's new or used, and like create little boutiques out of it. And it's very social, right? It has always traditionally been on hosting kind of parties and coming on to the platform to shop. And 2 years ago, they launched a styling service where if you come on, I can help you style your closet, right? How you may look. They recently, because of COVID, sped up launching shoppable live video sessions, and so that, like, a lot of their 8 million sellers can now post 15-second videos, live or not live, but like uploading footage to items that they are selling, showing it off in ways that you can wear it, and different ways to capture and engage the users. And so it is an interesting moment. Like, even e-commerce apps, right, are reimagining how they are catering to the audience now as well.
Kevin, maybe to your point about it being like a really frothy space, but my impression is that there's something there. Like the thesis kind of rings true. Like, you have so many companies who are doing it. If we think about just today, Pop Shop Live, one of our presenters yesterday, raised $3 million. So there's money being kind of thrown or backing companies like this. Like, what is it about the narrative of content and shoppability that's just so attractive to folks?
Yeah, I think it's a few factors. I mean, so I say frothy in a positive way almost, because I do feel like you can find your own live stream network. We'll call it the digital QVC. So I think one is larger players were a little bit slow to get into it. Instagram, TikTok, etc., in terms of developing the features that a brand or a retailer might need. So this could be anything as, directly chatting with the individual that's selling a product, to, actively reviewing it or engaging with the product in a more unique way. So, and the other thing I think is key here is these different platforms have been able to bring in a different audience. So the QVC, HSN kind of network was obviously a little bit older, oftentimes more Gen X. And then what I'm personally seeing is these newer platforms are often able to bring in Gen Z and the like, who are much more interested in that kind of content because it portrays in a different way.
Yeah, I'm actually very curious personally to see how this all plays out. We invest quite a bit in Asia, and so like live streaming commerce has been around for a long time, and a lot of these players do it. In the U.S., I have a lot of thoughts about why it hasn't taken off, but COVID really maybe has changed the game because a lot of the retailers are being challenged right now. While one may say like Instagram and TikTok and the likes are slower to move, doesn't mean that they're not building it, and doesn't mean they don't have the audience, right? So I am curious to see once these are built out, and history shows that it will, because in other parts of the world that they have done it already. So I'm actually personally very excited when TikTok launches in the US their commerce infrastructure.
Yeah. If we just think about like Facebook, I guess they have the audience there already, and we see them moving into that commerce space already with like Facebook Shops, and so it's very much moving towards the direction. So soon enough, the other, I'm sure that we can follow.
I love the fact that we talked about Network and Pop Shop Live and TikTok, all of the companies who have been at the conference. I mean, when we were starting to think about the conference and like which companies or which technologies we need to have represented at a conference, we really thought about it as we need to think about how to make consumers discover products online and then interact with them online, and then prompt them to make a purchase and fulfill those orders. So we've had companies in live streaming, in mixed reality, in last mile delivery, in alternative payments. What are some other technology trends that you've been following that our audience of brand executives and marketeers should be aware about and should follow?
Yeah, I can go on this one. A few key topics that I'm studying. One is unsold inventory, specifically within fashion. I'm thinking, we're fortunate to interview, the likes of Calvin Klein and people like that. And I'm estimating anywhere from 10 to 20 billion of unsold inventory that's living in warehouses and so forth. Where is that going to go? It's going to be kind of difficult for all of that to filter into a TJ Maxx all over the world. So I imagine there's some opportunity there, either from a sustainability standpoint of recycling those used goods, or a different retail outlet, or some other unique space. The second space that we're actively studying, and maybe a little late in the game, is the TikTok economy. So the same way there are now so many different services that plug into Instagram and Facebook and analyze the user on different terms. And I think the previous speakers mentioned about attribution. How will this live on TikTok? What are some unique challenges that TikTok will face compared to these other competitors? And how can one plug in? And then lastly, is a space called rights management. It's kind of boring. It's in media. It's mainly focused on the artist and collecting revenue based on music and assets that they have. This is a pretty outdated industry. There's only 3 major players in it, and it hasn't really changed in the last 60 years or so. So curious on how that industry evolves as well.
Thank you, Kevin. And Robin, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I've been mostly focusing on a lot around the order ahead and technologies and the contactless order pickup, etc. We've backed a lot of companies who are on actually serving the QSRs, the quick service restaurants, especially in this day and age where you're no longer dining inside a restaurant anymore, but like you still don't want to eat your own cooking every single day. So like, how are we enabling these small business owners to kind of continue their business, but take that online, right? Actually, we've backed 2 companies. One is Slice, who's been in our portfolio, who serves the pizzerias. They have about, over 10,000 pizzerias on their platform across the nation. We have Odeco, which does this is similar, but for coffee shops around the U.S. And so just thinking through, like, even for them, how do they kind of continue enabling both the business to operate? And so you think of the B2B commerce that comes along with QSRs, but also kind of enabling consumers to order from them. If you think about mobile wallet in the US, Starbucks owns kind of like a very large share of that, right? Other than like Apple. So, just like there is Shopify to Amazon, who's going to be that player against Starbucks in the QSR world. So we're kind of studying that same playbook, like who will do that against Domino's here in the US. And so we continue to look at those markets.
Yeah. So one thing, I mean, from your description of like the different, we'll say like maybe not verticals, but different kind of like products. You have pizza, you have coffee. It seems like at least the short term about the future of QSR or order ahead is fairly fragmented, right? If you want to order coffee from Starbucks, you have to have its own app. I'm trying to imagine and comparing it to like China as a model. You have WeChat and you can order anything on this platform. I'm curious as to like, where do you see it continuing, I guess in the US in this fragmented sort of state, or perhaps is there some sort of consolidation that would happen and in my mind would improve that kind of process of purchasing regardless of what you want?
Yeah, I mean, we saw kind of the fight around what Uber is trying to acquire and just Eat taking that away from them, right? And then they had to acquire Postmates, and so there has been a lot of aggregation around just food ordering in general. But these platforms, it is difficult for them to sustain, right? Because they take so much margin from the restaurants that like, how can they actually keep giving up everything that they have to them? And so a lot of that is shifting back to the consumer. Hey, Slice now have millions of users using their mobile app every day to order pizza, right? Can we see a similar platform emerge for quick service restaurants through Odeco or others? And so I think that in China, we have the lessons where it's all apps under the sun in one, right? But the big lesson here is actually like the fact that you have a mobile wallet, you're controlling all that around the user and what they're spending. And so because you're in those habits, so far we haven't seen Facebook do that or do that successfully yet. And so I think there is a lot of room for that to emerge. So that's kind of what we're looking at and what we're betting on.
Yeah. My sense is that Facebook is trying to move towards that direction, right? With like Libra, with the shops, there's a little bit of trying to create an operating system for the user. You can go to Facebook, you can do anything you want to buy, you can see social, etc.
Yeah.
So there is that movement, but we have yet to see that happen.
Yeah, and I think certain categories lend itself better than others, right? Like for Facebook, probably not kind of perishable goods, because while they had that partnership with Shopify still has to build out, like they're not for restaurants. Shopify is not really kind of in that space. And so ordering ahead for a specific time frame for a cup of coffee or like a sandwich is very different. And so I think there's going to be winners for certain categories with Facebook for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe transitioning, thinking about our audience, we want to make sure the conversation is relevant to them. A lot of them are brands. Kevin, I know like Plug and Play works really closely with brands and technology. You're really sitting in that center of connecting folks together. Wanted to hear how you kind of think about startups and how they should think, partner with brands and
yeah, I mean, so I think what we've seen is generally a pullback in brands that are actively working with startups across the board. What I would say, a high level of what I've seen is every single brand says our innovation budget is capped at this point. We're not actively entertaining any new engagements and rather focusing on existing engagements. But I think that still gives opportunity for entrepreneurs. I think now that the stakes are very clear, which is likely there's not going to be any paid engagement right now, entrepreneurs can work with Procter & Gamble and all these different players in a casual setting. And that might be just warming the lead and getting ready for it. But I think these companies will be back in 6 months, hopefully, with some kind of innovation efforts. That's my optimism.
And by casual, you mean, are we talking like a pilot? Like what, can you just dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the engagement and depending on your product, right? If it's a full integration, obviously that doesn't make sense to go into go and fully work on that. But if you have something that's low taxing, doesn't cost you that much, a free POC, I think at this point might make sense. I wouldn't recommend it generally because I feel just because I've seen that a lot happen where it doesn't lead into anything. But we've seen some success now with some portfolio companies that are actively engaging with these companies in a casual setting.
Yeah. So my sense, right, it also is like from some of the work we've done with our clients as well. Like it's a good time to be testing things as everything kind of shifts to digital. Like there's a greater urgency, but then to be able to kind of capitalize on some of the shifts like we were talking about with ordering ahead, contactless payments, etc. Like there's opportunities to test. Yeah, definitely not a fan of like the free POC kind of format. I don't think that's sustainable in the long run. But
agreed.
Yeah.
I think the other quick point I just want to add is we've also seen a lot of entrepreneurs change their existing solution for COVID specific. So one good company that I think about is a company called Lunchbox, who's actually based out of New York, a point of sale software for restaurants. Obviously that they may not make as much sense right now, but they realized that their technology could be used to find mom and pop stores. You could directly order from restaurants. And then they came out with a help with Main Street website. Like I think that's just a creative use case of their technology. And we've seen a lot of entrepreneurs do that, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm sure Robin's seen a few too.
Yeah. Robin, do you any thoughts on thinking about how startups, or from your own experience, how can you help brands as they think about their partnerships with startups?
I think there's startups who are brands. Like if you are a startup who is a brand, like think about leveraging different channels outside of social. I think it's so saturated now, right? There's actually quite a bit of scale that you can actually get if you work with a retailer, particularly some that are thriving and love, working with young brands like Target. I've seen like tremendous success. Well, like Target does have their own private label, which moves a lot of volume. But if you are a brand who maybe in beauty, maybe in personal care, who they do want to bring on board, like that actually is something that they actively seek and can really help you through this time, because I think, CPAs might have been down during COVID, but are coming back up already. And so like, D2C is still just a channel. It is not a business model, in my opinion. So like think of ways that you can continue to expand. What is your Amazon strategy? What is your Walmart strategy? Because they do have a marketplace, and these are where eyeballs are living and the audience is going. So I think something for you to definitely think about if you are a startup who is a brand.
Yeah. I think it works for brands as well, right? They should be thinking of these as channels rather than strategy.
Yeah. Leo, you have a question from the audience.
Okay.
So this is a question from Charles. Charles, you're really our most engaged audience member, so shout out to you. So his question is, what about brands working with entrepreneurs rather than startups? Do VCs ever fund entrepreneurs to build products or services for brands? And I wonder if this is a good question for Henrik on the first day, or maybe for Stu, because this seems related to what we have done.
I mean, I think maybe Kevin could speak to it more since he works a lot with kind of corporates. But I haven't seen VCs back that. I have seen brands themselves have their own funds, like Nike has their own program, right, that funds entrepreneurs to build products and services for them. But I haven't personally seen on the VC, or at least institutional VC side.
So just so I understand the question, is it so? What about brands that are looking to work with specific people rather than companies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, entrepreneurs rather than startups as companies.
Oh yeah, I mean, this has become a huge space actually. We're seeing a lot of, like, Procter & Gamble is a good example of this. I think Procter & Gamble works with Radical as well. P&G Ventures, which actually doesn't invest, that was a big surprise, but they actively partner with entrepreneurs to work on new ideas. We're seeing this incubator model definitely happen in corporations. I think what I haven't seen, but I think is definitely plausible, is external entrepreneurs. Oftentimes it's entrepreneurs that are either rotating MBA programs or are subject matter experts that have decided to create a company within. And then typically Procter & Gamble, whatever the bigger company, will own a majority share. And then that entrepreneur will get some equity and spin out.
Great. Well, thank you. I think that's all the time we have, and we still have one more speaker who was rescheduled from yesterday. So if you guys were here yesterday, at the end of our session, hop in as a platform broke. And so we've had to reschedule Mycroft, which is a voice tech company, to the end of today to close us out. And so, yeah, with that, well, thank you very much, Robin and Kevin, for joining us today. It was great to hear your insights.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.